Hey guys, welcome back to another lesson. This week we are looking at the end of World War II and the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. So a little bit of review. We were talking about the end of World War I. So how did European countries feel about war after World War I? It was a pretty devastating war. Had major effects on their economies and infrastructure. So do you think European countries were all that interested in war immediately after World War I? What was the Treaty of Versailles and who did it blame? So I want you to think about. We talked about the terms of the treaty and who it was harshest on. And that is very important moving forward in this lesson and the next couple of lessons. So go back and take a look at what the terms of the treaty were and who it blamed the most. So your goals for today. I can explain how the Treaty of Versailles helped create anger and resentment in Germany. I can describe what ultranationalism is, and I would need you to provide an example of ultranationalism from history. Okay, anger over the Treaty of Versailles. So after World War I, many German citizens were very angry with their government's decision to accept responsibility for the war. Remember, this was called the War Guilt Clause, and it meant that Germany was solely responsible for everything. Germany was a very proud nation. They were full of nationalism, and they did not like the idea of paying the Allies for something they all had a role in starting. Remember, we talked about all the alliances and the militarism and the backdoor deals between these countries. It was not just Germany's fault for starting the war. Germany had to pay reparation payments. These are huge sums of money, what would today be billions and billions of dollars. Reparations are money you have to pay another country. So in this cartoon, you can see the reparations totaling $55 billion, and the man underneath has Germany written on it. And he's being crushed by these payments because how could a country afford to give France or Britain this much money? This video here talks about what life was like in Germany after World War I and how many different political groups were arguing and starting to fight with each other. Germany was in chaos, and through chaos, sometimes a leader will emerge who is not the best leader. Because Germany had to pay so much money following the war, it kept printing more money. But if you just keep printing more money for the sake of printing it, it's not actually worth much. And then what happens is your money becomes worth less and less. This is called hyperinflation. Germany's banks printed so much money that the money became worthless. It was just like paper. So when your value of your money goes down, that's hyperinflation. I'll give you an example. One loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks in 1923. 200 billion. That's such a stupid amount of money that it's comical. You would just laugh because who would have that money? You can see in the pictures here, kids playing with boxes of money as if they're toys that they can stack. It was cheaper to build a kite made out of money than it was to actually buy a kite. And those bills could be $1,000 or even more. Here's a little infographic which shows in November of 1918, a loaf of bread costs about 1 mark. A mark is like $1 in Germany. Then it goes up to 163 marks, then 1.5 million marks, and eventually 200 billion marks. That is a crazy amount of money that is so stupid you would have zero chance of being able to afford any bread living in Germany, which is going to make you very angry and very hungry. When people are angry and hungry, they're going to look to someone to blame. The Nazi Party used fear, and they blamed France and Jewish people for most of Germany's problems. Many young men were angered by the Treaty of Versailles. They were former soldiers, and they felt that they were betrayed by the politicians. And these young men join the Nazis because the Nazis were pointing the finger at who they thought the reason were for all of these problems. These young men and these people wanted Germany to be a very strong nation. And you can see in this cartoon, the man has shackles on his wrists, and he's breaking the shackles of Versailles, which is holding them back. In this cartoon here, you can see a man with a Nazi emblem on him being tied up as he's watching the man with Deutschland, which means Germany, get beat up and poked and prodded by what we can assume is probably France and England, and they're tearing Germany apart. He also is shackled, meaning he can't move, by the Treaty of Versailles, which is drawn as a ball and chain. Germany after World War I was in a heap of trouble. It was going through an economic crisis. This meant there was very few jobs. Unemployment was extremely high. Young people were on the street with no money and no work. So they were angry. There was rising prices. Nobody could afford the food. No one could afford simple things like gasoline or clothing. There was a rise of communism. So people wanted the government to become what's called communist. Some people wanted the government to provide everything for people, like food and housing and work. And this was leading to riots in the streets. People who were in favor of communism were fighting people who were not in favor of communism. Hitler and the Nazis during this time rise to power because they take advantage of the chaos Germany is going through. There's a rise in what's called ultranationalism. And the Nazis are examples of a group that is very ultranationalist. This means they love their country so much that they are willing to hurt others and use violence. Ultranationalists usually believe that other races or religions and beliefs are not acceptable. If someone considers themselves an ultranationalist, they believe they want their country to be the best, and they have no problems enforcing that on other countries around them. You can see in the image here, it's a picture of Adolf Hitler with the Nazi flag, and he has an army of Nazi supporters behind him. And they've drawn him in a way of he's leading the people to greatness with an eagle soaring above. Ultranationalism almost always emerges in times of crisis and chaos. So an economic crisis, for example, can cause people to focus on their own needs and their own country more. And this is what Hitler was promising for people. He was promising to regain Germany's glory and to rebuild the country, to create the best Germany that people have ever seen. But there's a lot of problems that come with the way they want Germany to be. So we'll talk a little more about Adolf Hitler. He's one of the most famous or infamous men in history. And he's seen as one of the most horrible dictators and political leaders of our time. The oversimplified video will go through some of the history of Hitler and his rise to power and some of the horrible things he did in Europe. Adolf Hitler was able to gain power because he promised the people of Germany things. He promised them, first of all, we're going to stop paying France war reparations. What are they going to do about it if we just stop paying them? We're going to create lots of jobs for German workers. So this might be building factories, building highways, building hospitals, building roads, building new apartment buildings. And this is going to get people back to work. He wanted to rebuild the German military, and not just rebuild it, because remember, the Treaty of Versailles said that Germany could not have a military over 100,000 people, which is not very big. He wanted a 1 million person army with the best tanks, the best airplanes, the best guns. He also wanted to kick out Jewish people and other lesser people. I'll put lesser in quotations. People that he didn't feel was German. Hitler promised to take back all the German lands that had been taken from Germany at the end of World War I and unite all German-speaking people. So some people in parts of France or Poland or Czech Republic spoke German, and he said we should be allowed to invade these countries because those are actually part of Germany and they should be part of a big German Third Reich or empire. So once you've gone through the slides and the videos, you can complete your online lesson 3 questions, which are very similar to the first 2 assignments that we've done. For this one, it is out of 28 marks. So you should be able to find the information because I've given you the slide numbers for each question. Some of them you need to think about your own responses. I don't want you copying and pasting answers. Okay, I'm going to start taking marks off for that. You need to put things into your own words. You may have to analyze some of the cartoons here based off of what we just talked about. And there's a quote here that says, "The end of World War I is the start of World War II." And I'm asking you, do you agree or disagree with that statement? And I want you to explain why or why not using at least 3 different facts we learned during this lesson. I know you guys can do a great job on this. Keep up the good work. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you online at our Google Meet. Take care.